I'll call to order. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. For those participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please complete the request to speak form. MAG staff can assist with any questions you may have. If you parked in the garage, a validation stamp is available on the counter. If you purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available from MAG staff. We will now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members.
Thank you, Chair. I will go down the list by agency alphabetically. Please let me know if I mispronounce your name. Raquel Schatz, City of Apache Junction. Steve O'Brien, ADOT. Raj Thowdam, City of Avondale. John Willett, City of Buckeye.
Present.
Thank you. Chair Cerna. Thank you. Tessa Wessel, City of El Mirage.
Here.
Thank you. Jennifer Acuna, Federal Highway Administration.
Present.
Thank you. Andy Smith, Town of Florence.
Present.
Thank you. Hong Huo, Town of Gilbert.
Here.
Thank you. Patrick Sage, Glendale.
Here.
Thank you. Brian Harville, Goodyear.
Here.
Thank you. Keith Jernaski, Litchfield Park. Monir Zaman, City of Maricopa. Thank you. Angela Macaluso, McDOT. Sabina King, City of Mesa.
Here.
Thank you. Robert DeSerrano, Paradise Valley. Charles Andrews, Peoria.
Here.
Thank you. Maisha Harris, Phoenix.
Present.
Thank you. Christopher Wanamaker, Pinell County Public Works.
Present.
Thank you. Brad Novacek, Queen Creek. Jennifer Jack, Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community.
Present.
Thank you. Satane Halak, City of Scottsdale.
Present.
Thank you. Jonathan Fooch, City of Surprise.
Present.
Thank you. Corey Steely, City of Tempe.
Present.
Thank you. Aaron Herrera, proxy for Gabriel Elias, City of Tolleson.
Present.
Thank you. Grant Anderson, Town of Youngtown.
Here.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone?
This is Brad Novacek. I don't know if my audio was on at the time that I answered present.
Also, this is Angela Macaluso with Maricopa County. Sorry, my audio wasn't working.
Thank you, Angela, and thank you, Brad. Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Our next item is called to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda. Informational items or items on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience unless the chair requests an exception to the limit. I have received no requests to speak for the call to the audience. MAG also provides the opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via the MAG website. Any comments received 2 hours prior to the meeting have been shared with committee members in advance of the meeting for consideration and will be included in the formal meeting's minutes. Staff Have we received any online written comments for the call to the audience?
Thank you, Chair. We have received no online written comments for the call to the audience.
This item is on the agenda for information and will be presented by Wendy Miller, MAG Transportation Improvement Program Manager.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Street Committee. I am pleased to be reporting for my first Street Committee meeting, so this is exciting. Just wanted to do a general reminder that the new schedule takes effect for this year, for 2026, our first meeting. We're meeting on the first Tuesday of even months, February, April, June, August, October, and December. And then I would like to also acknowledge a new appointment for MAG. Audra Kester Thomas has been appointed MAG's new Executive Director. Next slide, please, Tyler. Oh, okay. Thank you. And then we would like to welcome our new officers, Chair Charlie Cerna from City of Chandler and Vice Chair John Willett from City of Buckeye. In addition, announcement of our new member, Tessa Wessel with the City of El Mirage. And then finally, we have a reminder that the build grant is coming up due on February 24th. Thank you, Chair. That concludes my presentation.
Our next item is approval of the meeting minutes. Does any member of the committee have any questions? No questions? Prior to approval of the meeting minutes, there is an opportunity for members of the public to comment. I have received no requests for this item. Staff, we have received any online written comments for this item?
Thank you, Chair. We have received no online written comments for this agenda item.
Is there a motion to approve agenda items number 4?
I make a motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion from Jennifer and John. And a second from John. We will have those participating in the meeting online take part in a voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. We need to see the faces of everyone to participate in the voice vote. For those who cannot or do not want to turn on their cameras, staff will conduct a roll call vote. Staff will only call on those virtual who did not turn on their camera. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote so that staff can count the people's names whose cameras are not on. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room and those online? Those in favor say A.
Aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Members, please leave your cameras on. Staff, can you take a roll call of those members participating virtually who did not turn on their cameras?
Thank you, Chair. Brad Novacek.
Aye.
Thank you. Hong Huo. I think your audio is off, Hong. Can I get a Hong Huo? I need to hear from you still. Can you give a thumbs up, maybe?
Aye.
Oh, thank you very much. Mr. Chair, the motion passes. Thank you.
This item is on the agenda for information discussion and will be presented by David Lucas, MAG Transportation Engineering Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Street Committee. I'm pleased to be here today to provide an update on the Transportation Systems Management Operations Plan that's currently under development. So I would like to begin with some definitions. So Transportation Systems Management and Operations is focused on optimizing the performance of transportation systems using operational improvements to maximize the value of our infrastructure investments. You may be more familiar with ITS, or Intelligent Transportation Systems, And these focus on the use of advanced technologies like sensors, communications, and computation to enhance transportation systems. Now, ITS is just one of various TSMO strategies that are currently in practice within the region. Others that you may be familiar with are traffic signal coordination, integrated corridor management, and work zone management. So as everyone is familiar, our region is one of the fastest growing in the nation, a significant increase not only in the business development side, but also in the number of residents that continue to make our region their home. And that helps make the case for why TSMO is important. We know that the cost of transportation in both time and money just continues to increase. There's increasing demand for limited financial resources, and we have constraints on our physical infrastructure. We can't continue to build our way out of congestion. Construction, incidents, severe weather, all of these continue to stress our transportation network and require innovative strategies to allow us to get the most out of our existing system possible. We're familiar with these great graphics that show the growth of the regional freeway system over the last 40 plus years. But we can't lose sight of the fact there has also been growth on our arterial networks, as well as on our transit and active transportation networks as well. So TSMO is not a specific project, but rather a mindset. And it's something that needs to be institutionalized to be most effective. It needs to be incorporated into your business processes, into the systems and technology that you use, as well as performance measures. You need to be able to identify what measures need to be gathered, what data, and how and when to review these performance measures to make sure that the strategies you've selected are actually having the benefit that you're hoping that they do. Organization and workforce and culture are also important. Having, again, that innovative viewpoint and the willingness to try new strategies. And finally, collaboration, which is the key to everything that we do within the region and which MAG takes on a major role, is we need to collaborate and work together in order for these strategies to be most effective. TSMO is part of our regional transportation plan, and the most recent effort to work on this area is the Systems Management Operations Plan from 2018. The RTP also includes TSMO and ITS strategies as part of its investment portfolio, recognizing that these strategies are a very cost-effective way to optimize the existing transportation network. A significant amount of money has been allocated for these type of strategies and operational improvements throughout the region over the next 20 plus years. So again, TSMO is a regional mindset focused on optimizing performance of the entire system, not just one specific mode, one specific corridor or segment of the region. It focuses on sharing information and coordinating response to improve our overall situational awareness. And finally, it's focused on measuring effectiveness of these strategies. This yields significant benefits. It allows us to make the most of our existing infrastructure, those billions of dollars investments that we highlighted earlier. It improves coordination between system operators, whether between modes or across jurisdictional boundaries. It allows us to do comprehensive incident management and improve the reliability and the safety of the transportation system. And finally, it produces methods that we can use to reduce the O&M cost of our transportation system. So now I'd like to give you a quick update on the status of the regional TSMO plan that's currently under development. At the direction of Regional Council, MAG undertook this effort in June of last year to develop an 18-month project to develop a regional TSMO plan. The focus at this point has been on tasks 2 and 3 that are shown in the list there on your screen. really focused on stakeholder engagement and documenting the existing practices and programs that are in place and currently under development within the region. We're currently wrapping up that effort, and over the next few months, we'll be pivoting where we focus on the vision, the goals, and the objectives, and recommending program areas that we want to focus on to meet the needs that have been identified by our member agencies. So this is a update on the timeline where we're currently at, coming up on the halfway point of this project. Up till now, we've been focusing on establishing current conditions. Basically, where are we now? Setting the direction to identify where we want to go, and then developing recommendations and strategizing implementation to identify the best way to get there. Again, this is a new approach. Unlike the SM&O plan that was referenced earlier from 2018, the current regional TISMO plan is not focused just on ITS, but the entire TISMO umbrella of available strategies. There's more funding available than there has been in the past, so that gives us additional opportunity. There's more flexibility in the types of funding that's available. It's an opportunity to align the TISMO program with other MAG program areas and leverage some of the expertise that MAG has in, for example, data management and analysis and modeling. It allows us to leverage existing infrastructure investments and focus on a regional plan that is inclusive of all agencies and all stakeholders. And it's an opportunity where we can incorporate new partners that have not traditionally been involved in the TISMO planning process, like our 3 excellent universities, Arizona Commerce Authority, Arizona Trucking Association, and our special event venues. The work completed to date covers the project management plan, a detailed stakeholder engagement plan, several technical advisory group meetings. We just completed the 4th one this morning. A detailed and comprehensive stakeholder survey was completed, where we asked all of the stakeholders mentioned earlier to provide their priorities. What are their needs that this plan should focus on? Also, we completed interviews across multiple departments within MAG. That included programming, data management and application, planning, policy initiatives, and our executive leadership. We've also done outreach to various committees within the region, including the MAG ITS Committee, the Aztec Operations Committee, and various technical committees within MAG, like this committee. Stakeholder focus groups were completed in December, where it gave us the opportunity to do deep dive on some of the information that came up in some of these earlier discussions and interviews, following up on to make sure that we really understood what the stakeholders were telling us and having an opportunity for them to weigh in and make sure that everybody was on the same page. This has culminated in the existing conditions report, which is under final review and is the first major deliverable of this project. So as part of that effort to make sure that we understood what our stakeholders were telling us, we first came up with this list of regional themes. That was the outcome of some of the early discussions. So some of these include shared regional data ecosystem, staff development and training, which was a big one we heard from multiple stakeholders, making sure that there's alignment between the great planning work that MAG does and the implementation that the Aztec Regional Partnership does, and fostering a culture of collaboration. As we continue to refine these, they coalesce around a little bit more detailed areas, which are listed here on the screen. Some of those include traffic signal coordination. Again, staffing and training was a priority. Traffic incident management and transit management also came to the forefront. But it was important to recognize that we weren't just brainstorming and coming up with a laundry list of ideas. We really needed our stakeholders to help us rank and prioritize these needs. While we talked about the amount of funding that's allocated for TISMO and ITS previously, it's not enough to do everything that we need to. So we need to prioritize and rank these so that we know where we should start and focus on initially. So the screen shows version 2. It's probably more accurate to say 8 or 9 because we've continued to have many discussions and continued to refine these program areas, but they've become fairly stable over the last month into the 7 that are listed on the screen here. And they can be grouped into regional mobility management, regional data, and developing a regional resource hub. In addition to those 7 areas, we have to recognize that there's quite a bit of variation and variability throughout the region in the capability levels of our different member agencies. Some may be working on these areas, but are only at the initial planning stages. Others have already begun implementation or are actively doing these activities and have incorporated them into their operations and management, while others are looking to do the next version of it and maintain and replace what they have. So we have to make sure that these program areas meet all of our member agencies where they are currently and help them achieve growth to get to that next stage. This is also a great time to do this effort because there's several related studies that are underway that tie in very nicely with this effort. One of these was a recent strategic assessment done of freeway traffic operation strategies that have been looked at over the years and assessing which ones should be considered for implementation in the future. We've assessed our wrong way driver program to identify where there are gaps in the system and where we need to provide additional funding to make sure that this important system, which is proven to be effective, needs to be deployed and implemented. We're also evaluating our TSOP, or a traffic signal optimization program, to make sure that we're getting significant benefit out of it and meeting the needs of our member agencies. All 3 of those efforts have recently concluded, and now we are also in the process of working on the 3 listed on the bottom: regional ITS architecture, regional community network assessment, and development of the regional active transportation plan. And there are various other efforts that are currently underway as well. With the coordination that we're doing within MAG and within other departments, we're making sure that this plan is in alignment with all of these other efforts. Major deliverables, as mentioned, the existing conditions report is wrapping up. We're now pivoting to focus on the vision and the framework of the plan, looking at a data management plan, and finally, an implementation and wrapping up the entire plan in November of this year. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, David. Do any members have questions or comments? This item on the agenda for information and discussion will be presented by Patrick Stone, MAG Deputy Transportation Director.
Thank you, Chair Cerna, members of the Street Committee. Pleasure today to present this item, which is an update on federal reauthorization. Brief overview of my presentation, going to do a little bit of a background on reauthorization, what it is, talk about surface transportation as it relates to legislation, impacts to funding in the region, and then where do we go here with some next steps. So first, Reauthorization 101, an introductory course. As you see on the screen, reauthorization with a question mark, really what is reauthorization? Well, what it does, it sets the policies, priorities, and most specifically, the funding levels at the federal level for surface transportation. Critical in that a lot of the projects we see in surface transportation are these large capital investment projects that take many years to develop and deliver. So this provides a financial certainty to states. Why they call it reauthorization? They aren't starting new here. So every time we look at federal surface transportation funding and the legislation associated with it, they start from the prior bill, kind of see what they had in the previous one, and then do a next generation iteration of that bill. Typically, we look at surface transportation funding being 5 to 6 years in length. So the current transportation bill is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It was signed into law back in November of 2021, as highlighted in bold. It expires this year. And in fact, it expires on September 30th. Why this is critical? Well, as you see in the note, over the last 25 years, no surface transportation bill has been reauthorized prior to the expiration of the current bill. I'll discuss later what we think the odds are of this one of meeting those targets. A key component of surface transportation is obviously the funding. The primary source of funding into surface transportation is the Highway Trust Fund, made up of federal excise taxes and gas taxes. Key point, and I'll come back to further in my presentation, since 2008, the Highway Trust Fund has not been able to support the outlays in surface transportation, and in fact, almost $280 billion in funding has had to be transferred from the general fund to keep it solvent. And then finally, as it is reauthorization, this requires congressional action. Both the Senate and the House do actually draft their transportation proposals independently. Sometimes we'll see the White House weigh in and provide what they feel are priorities. I did want to do a real quick analysis. When you think of it, it's just not a singular. So within the Senate, there's actually 4 committees that have some piece of the puzzle when it comes to surface transportation funding. Of note, on the 2 in the bold, the Environmental and Public Works Committee is responsible for writing the highway section of the bill. And at the bottom, probably more importantly, the Finance Committee figures out how to pay for it. Over in the House side, a little simpler, but still 3 committees. The big one is the T&I Committee, or Transportation and Infrastructure. They write the policy side of surface transportation funding, and then Ways and Means, again, is responsible for the dollars and cents. So let's talk about surface transportation bills. Being a history major, I love history, so I love to talk about the history. For those that may be surprised, the actual first surface transportation bill was 110 years ago. In 1916, the Federal Aid Road Act was actually what is considered the first piece of surface transportation legislation. I did want to call a highlight out into 1921, which was the Federal Highway Act. This is the designation of the highway system, a critical component of the nation's infrastructure growth. And then one other key point, post-World War II, the development and implementation of the interstate system was a core focus of surface transportation in this nation. We're going to do a little pause here. And then what you see is more recent history, although looking back 1991, now 35 years ago. But, and I'll go through these each in detail. 1991 is considered the beginning of the modern highway program. So that's where they feel like it moved into the, at that time, 20th century. You can see the various surface transportation bills moving forward to IIJA, or the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law Bill, in 2021. And as I keep focusing on this, IIJA bill expires later this year in September. So when I talk about modern transportation bills, the first bill we talk about is ICE-T, or the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act of 1991. They love their acronyms. 6-year bill, about $150 billion. As I noted, the 50s really saw the introduction of building out the interstate system. This was the bill where they shifted into the highway system. This was the creation of the National Highway System. Key components, especially with the region, presentations that have been given to policy committees here at MAG talking about the importance of air quality in the region. This was the bill that actually established the linkage of transportation funding to air quality. You see 4 highway programs, and I'll talk about this as I go through each of the bills. There's a push-pull where they create more programs, they kind of consolidate, create more programs, consolidate. This was a growth bill. They added 4 new programs. And the key component on the bottom, I'll take just a moment. Surface transportation funding is built on formulas. So they have formulas to calculate how they allocate the funding. This bill was an unusual bill in that they did not create new formula factors. They just said, we will use what was in the prior bill and roll that forward into this bill here. Of note, and in parentheses, this excluded census data from 1990. This will be important in a future slide. We move forward towards the end of the 1990s, the Transportation Equity Act for the 21st Century, or T21. This time a 6-year bill, just over $200 billion. Again, we saw the creation of a new program, what was known back in the day as Transportation Enhancement, which is now known as Transportation for Alternatives. And then we see that kind of push-pull. So this bill did actually update the formulas and did use new formula factors to allocate funding. Of note, and this was interesting as I was preparing for this presentation, prior to this bill, they could actually take Highway Trust Fund revenues to help with the federal deficit. This bill was the one that stopped them from doing that. Moving to the 2000s, 21st century, this is the big one. Safe, accountable, flexible, and efficient Transportation Equity Act of 2005, a legacy for users, Safety Lou. Passed in 2005, 5-year bill, just under $250 billion. Again, the creation of new formula programs. This one really had a hallmark in the safety element. Both the Highway Safety Improvement Program and Safe Routes to School were included in this bill. But we get to the funding side a little different. This is when the trust fund could no longer fully support the highway program. This was the first time they had to get an infusion from the general fund. And then also, this was the last bill to use updated formula factors. So in 2005, they went and updated the formulas, and they kept them updated through 2009, which was the end of the bill. That's the last time they updated formula factors, which will become important in a couple slides, as it has a negative impact to us here in Arizona. Move to the 2010s, moving ahead for progress in the 21st century, MAP 21. This one's an interesting one. Shortest bill in the modern transportation lexicon, only 2 years, just over $100 billion, but probably considered the more transformative bill of the 21st century. And the reason why, not the first couple bullet points, although as I noticed, this is where they did a reduction. So they did a consolidation of 4 programs. It's that final bullet. This one established for performance-based approach to transportation and planning and funding. So results began to matter, and it was tied into how the states implement their projects. So as I noted, this is where they shifted the math. They no longer updated the formulas. As I noted, Safety Lou was the last bill that had formula updates. And what this bill said was, hey, whatever you got in 2009, that's what you're going to get. So they set a fixed percentage. It was no longer a calculated. They just said, you got 1.85% in Arizona's case in 2009. 1.85% is what you shall have. So we move forward to the next bill, Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, or the FAST Act, back to a 5-year bill, $300 billion, as you notice if you do the annual average. Each bill does grow on its predecessor. Only one new formula program here, and it was an acknowledgement of the importance of freight in the national picture. The Surface Transportation Program was actually converted into what's known as a block grant program. Of interest to the region was they changed the distribution. It used to be 50% was allocated based on population, and 50% could be used anywhere in the state, and they've slowly increased that over the last 2 bills. And on the funding side, again, the Highway Trust Fund could not maintain up with outlays, and another $70 billion was required to make this bill happen. And that moves us to today. As you know, with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, 5 years, $567 billion. We now have an annual average of over $100 billion a year, single largest investment in transportation in this nation's history. Did add 2 formula programs. Apologies. One thing it did differently here than what we've seen prior to this is traditionally the Highway Trust Fund funded those programs, and we talk about it came out of the Highway Trust Fund and how it was funded. IIJA did something different in that they also did what's known as an advanced appropriation. And this said essentially, hey, we are going to advance appropriations from the general fund to build out what were quasi-formula programs. 2 noted on the screen are the EV program and bridge formula. So this was a shift in policy in how they fund and pay for transportation. As the preceding bills had reduced the number of grant programs, this one went way the opposite direction. And in fact, currently only 76% of funding is allocated by formula. The other 24% is done through discretionary grants. So a lot of history. How does it impact funding in the region? You saw this slide as part of Mr. Lucas's presentation. This is the RSTIP funding. I want to focus on a different component of the slide. As you see, taking the lower right-hand corner to the center of the screen, talking about the 3 sources of federal funds, those which come directly to MAG through FHWA and FTA, and also our portions our region's portion of ADOT's funding. All told, almost 40% of our regional strategic transportation infrastructure investment plan, or the RSIP, comes from federal sources. It's a critical component of how this region delivers transportation investments. So I've talked a few times about Highway Trust Fund. I kind of wanted to use a little bit of a graphical illustration here to drive home the point. What you really see here, and while the note talks about 2008, it only goes back to 2012, but you see the actual balance of the trust fund, and it has, it trails along, gets these big peaks, which are those infusions from the new transportation bills. But as it stands today, the trust fund will go insolvent in 2028 without additional congressional action. Why, you say, might that be occurring? Well, it's no different than what we talked about at the state level. If you've ever heard about the Highway User Revenue Fund, or HURF, made up primarily of state gas tax along with vehicle fees, the Highway Trust Fund is made up of the federal gas tax, and very similar to the state, has not been increased since the early 90s. Apply inflation to that, and the purchasing power has gone down 73% in 30 years, from 93 to 2003. So the trust fund does not have a sustainable funding mechanism at this point. So next steps, where do we go for here? Where are we on the reauthorization journey? So last year, Congress began the kickoff. So they had some stakeholder meetings over last summer, really started coalescing what they identified as key priorities. From MAG's perspective, a lot of the national groups developed their own policy papers. So organizations like the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations and others identified what they felt were key tenets to include in the next surface transportation bill. Fast forward to this spring, we anticipate bills to be introduced fairly shortly. Every week I hear that they're exchanging drafts of the bills, but nothing yet quite ready for the public eye. MAG continues to analyze it as we hear things. We focus on that. And in fact, yesterday, two representatives did introduce a bill into Congress, not so much tied to reauthorization, but about the funding frameworks and how dollars are allocated within a state. So we're going to track that. We'll have more information at a subsequent meeting. Moving to the summer, Congress will, as I noted before, the 4 committees in the Senate, 3 committees in the House will start developing their portions of the bill, bring them to the floors in their respective chambers for passage. Obviously, we will be continuing to analyze the impacts until all legislation is passed. These are all drafts, but we start analyzing what we see as perceived and potential impacts to the region. And then if everything went according to plan, they'd reconcile the bills in the fall. It would go to the president's desk for signature. It would be signed. And then we'd come back through our committee process and start providing those updates and what we see the impacts being to the region. I want to leave with 2 slides, really kind of just some issues, what we've heard from both a local perspective and then a state perspective, to give kind of both sides of it. So there's a group called the LOT Coalition, made up of a bunch of those national organizations. And what they're really advocating for, and what they've continued to advocate for, is locals are responsible for a lot of roadways in this country, but they only receive 14% of the funding. They would like more direct allocation of funding, and also to increase the planning funds to allow those organizations to do a better job managing what they do. One note, that final bullet that's kind of highlighted, currently federal funding on the highway side is use or lose. That which you don't use at the end of the year goes away. They would like to establish a provision to allow balances to be carried over. On the other side, we have the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, or AASHTO. And so they kind of have a little bit of a different perspective. I think the one thing they've acknowledged and identified that the next transportation bill should at least be similar to the current bill, while also growing a little bit to account for inflation. As noted, there's a pay for behind that. And then they kind of have a different perspective. I talked about formula funding, grant funding. They would like to see formula funding go up to 95%. Right now, as I noted earlier, it sits at 76%, quite a shift. And then finally, I'll just highlight the second to last bullet. As I noted, MAP 21 introduced the tie-in of funding to performance targets. They're lobbying to perhaps sever that link and remove that tie altogether. And with that, Chair Serna, members of the Street Committee, concludes my presentation. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Patrick. Do any members have questions or comments?
Yes, I do. Charles Andrews, City of Peoria. Patrick, great presentation. Thank you. Your presentation, your PowerPoint, will that be available for distribution? I'd like to share with staff.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Cerna, members of the street committee. Charles, yeah, we'll make sure that's out on the website so that member agencies get it. I will note the slide decks are out there also from, I gave a version of this presentation last month in January to both management committee and regional council, so certainly can also look at those as well.
Are there any requests from the membership for an item on a future agenda? The next agenda item is comments from the committee. Are there any comments or announcements from the membership? The next meeting of the street committee will be on Tuesday, April 14th, 2026 at 1 p.m. with no further business.